Good evening. It's the new Nigerian podcast with your host David Arable. It's a pleasure to have tonight um, a foremost oil and gas consultant, a social political commentator, Ademola Adigun. Ademola, you're welcome to the TNN podcast.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
the usual what we do is we tend to ask you how your background was, where you were born, how your childhood was, your influences in childhood, and how you've got to where you are at the moment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, David. And first of all, let me say well done. This is very good for a lot of us. I hopefully can learn from it. So my name is Ademola Henry Adigun. Grew up all in Nigeria. I started off, I grew up in Jos, went to school in Jos. And then when I was about 11 or 10, I came down Southwest. Two reasons. My parents wanted to speak Yoruba because they didn't want me to not speak Yoruba. And then I got into IBC Doani, which was horror for me for the first 1 year and everything. But then later I got the groove of it. And then left school, got into university, started off chemical engineering. I went to do my IT as a chemical engineer, and I realized I don't want to be a chemical engineer anymore. That was very boring experience. And then I got into development, and then finished school, did some work in the consulting firm, did some banking work. Then I got into development proper, started off with the World Bank UBA project, then moved to business environment. And then in the last 13, 14 years, I've been oil and gas reforms. So one ended up in the place where one didn't want to be in the first place. So for 10 years, I was a leader of the oil and gas reforms of the country, funded by UK government. Did that, got some things done not done properly, but we're where we are. And then the last 2 years, I've been on my own. I work with the government on subsidy, on the PI implementation, that's Petroleum Industry Act. Supported some conversations around more depth in oil and gas reforms. Work with some states in economic development plans. So it's been an interesting part of my life.
Excellent. So it's quite I don't know if I could call it ironic, but I happen to have been born in Jos myself.
Interesting.
Yes, I went to Corona Jos
Oh,
um,
interesting.
until we moved down south to Benin,
Oh, okay.
where I did the rest of my primary school.
Oh,
Ended up in Idoani, just
yeah,
like you. My
yeah.
first year was horrors.
Horror.
Uh, we we um, we were in the temporary site, which I don't think
Yeah, I
you
know.
got
I
to
know you guys are
experience.
campus. Yes.
Yeah, we were in temporary site and it was a nightmare. But just like you, I got the hang of it.
Yes.
Um, the school made an impact on me. I'm very
It did.
glad I went to
It
that
did.
school
It did.
now,
It did. It
based
did.
on the type and quality of people who have come out of that school, including yourself.
I
But
mean, imagine that I've been in London for 5 days and I've met 8 of my classmates.
8 of your
I
classmates.
mean, only one was planned. 2 Uber, one random. It's so exciting, and it was very nice. People haven't seen in years. So it's that kind of community. And like you said, you don't need to make something out of you. And
It does.
all of them are proud. It makes it tough. Resilience.
It does. You're absolutely right. But let's go back to primary, secondary.
Yeah.
A unique thing that influenced your decisions, that influenced your life. We always want to have something unique which no other person has had before in that period of your life.
Well, I went to Hillcrest in Jos. Hillcrest is an American school. And I had very kind teachers from my grade 1 to grade 5. I had a lot of people that were very kind to me. Um, I had only one teacher I didn't like, but the others were very, very kind. And I felt that was good. And then secondary school was also a very unique experience as well. There were the bully seniors and there were the very nice seniors. And there were a lot of teachers who were very kind and very good to people. So for me, my perspective of life is influenced by the friendships I formed, the kind of people I connected with. And at a certain point in my life, I realized that I wanted to build things. I wanted to build people up. So that for me was a big influence. I don't like people suffering. I want people to be more empowered. So I think that's it there, you know.
You're a social political commentator, apart from working in the
Yeah.
oil and gas industry where you had a lot of experience.
Yes.
Let's take, for example, I don't know if you've answered this question recently, the oil subsidy removal in Nigeria. What's your opinion about it? And how do you think this will impact the people of Nigeria as well as the government?
Well, I worked on oil subsidy removal for 10 years. It was something we wanted to do because we realized the impact of subsidy on Nigerians was negative. I don't have any problem with subsidies. I've said it several times. Subsidies are good, whether in education or health or oil and gas. But there must be some criteria subsidy meets. First of all, it must be transparently managed, whatever subsidy it is. It must benefit more people. It must be affordable for the country doing it, and it must be efficient. So with petrol, it didn't meet any of those criteria. I mean, it benefits the rich and middle class. The bigger your car is, the more you get subsidy. For the poor, it impacts them, but don't benefit from it as much. And then secondly, down the line, it was draining our GDP. The expenditure on subsidy was 5 times that of health, 4 times that of education, and thrice that of defense. So in my mind, it wasn't sustainable anymore. Nobody was benefiting from it. And then we moved from 35 million liters of petrol a day, at some point, 97 million liters of petrol a day. So all those things made me realize it wasn't good, and it was draining the economy. We're boring to do it. It was a tough decision to remove it because I know the effects it's having on inflation, effects having on people's pockets and everything. My hope is just that now that we've done it, we can sustain it. But at the same time, I'm also an advocate of doing things properly. I don't think the way it's been done is the best way to do it. My advice to government was to say, come in, spend a month negotiating, spend a month telling people what you will do for them in return for what you're taking out from them, and put those conditions in place, and then take it out. But what they did was just take it out, and they created a chaos system where people are now in pain, people are suffering, markets distorted, things that shouldn't happen have happened, but subsidy had to go, whatever it is. So my view is it had to go. My view is we should not bring it back. My view is subsidize those things people really feel. I tell people, I mean, I talk a lot on social media, and gets me to trouble sometimes. The middle class in Nigeria doesn't really exist. Each of us are one step away from poverty. One illness in your house, somebody falling sick, having dialysis, can send it to the grave. It can send it into penury. By the time you spend all your income on dialysis, or you have to buy a new kidney, look at what happened to Curry Mad. He's in jail. So all those things are the things that I think should subsidize: education and health. I find it very sad that as of today, a lot of people can't even afford jam forms. I know how many jam forms I have to buy a year. How many times I have to pay for hike fees? This should be free. I mean, it's annoying to see jam declaring profits, jam taking money back to government. That's rubbish. It's not a profit-making venture. So let social things be there. And if you can get education and health correctly, then petrol is a luxury item. I mean, now that people have got subsidy, people are now going to adjust their life to the reality. It's only in Nigeria that people buy 5 SUVs or 4. Now you sell your car, you buy small little cars now. And then the government itself should cut down the cost of governance as well. So in my mind, I support it. I'm not happy the way it's been done, but however, there's no point crying over split milk. Let's move forward with it.
So, in just one breath, you've offered solutions to the situation on ground. I hope the people listening to the podcast, especially government people, can take this on board. So,
well, government doesn't like people like me. Government doesn't like people that criticize them. In fact, one government official told to me that he would have asked me to work with them, but that they don't want me to work with them because I criticize their team. I'm like, well, that's the point of it. We can't all become dumb because we want to eat, in quotes. And I thank God I don't need to eat from government. But the problem about government is government always thinks it's wiser than people outside it or inside it. Same mistakes those before them they make again. So now we're in a crisis mode. what we said they shouldn't do. We said, look, do it, but do it in a way. I mean, even doctors, they give injection, they put spirits, they clean your bum, they rub it, so that the pain is mitigated. You can't put people in pain like this and expect now NLC also strike. They want to get an injunction against NLC striking. NLC will still strike, injunction or not. It's just a mess.
So let me ask you, we've just recently conducted elections. A winner was declared. There's a lot of litigation in court. How is that affecting Nigeria itself? What do you think the outcomes of the litigation will be? How will that impact on the current and sworn-in president of the federation?
First of all, I think we're very divided now into different camps. A lot of people weren't happy. It was a Muslim ticket. There wasn't any balancing. The president now, his vote wasn't substantial enough to show too much acceptance. He got 8 point something million votes. Apparently, other presidents that have won elections get 12 million votes to win an election, or 12.7, 12.8. But because of the other people's split, they got 6.3, 6.7, respectively. So there's that issue there. But I believe we should move on. I think people should go to court as they've gone to court. I mean, I'm for everything that'll keep the peace. Whether you have issues or not, go to the court to get the issues sorted out. Whatever the court decides, we'll live with it. But that's part of the challenges you have when you want to do reforms. To do reforms successfully, there must be some legitimacy you enjoy. Now, the more legitimacy you have, the more easier it is to do reforms. Now, when people are not really accepted you, which is normal, Nigeria is a country where they never accept somebody lose. Even the one that left, Buhari, in his mind, he won all the elections he lost, which is a problem. He will tell you he won elections. Somebody is only in one area and tell you he won elections. No alliances, he won elections. But that's where the politicians in Nigeria are. But I believe that we shouldn't let politicians destroy our lives. They are very good at dividing us. They're very good at sending us statements that make us divided or incite people against each other. That's their stock in trade. So what I say is, look, let them do their business. Let us do our business. Our business is to get people out of poverty, get the economy moving forward, live in peace. You can't get anything done without peace. Peace is a national ingredient. If the court cases decide otherwise, somebody else, it's fine. We'll live with it.
I need to dig in a bit deeper. For the first time, supposedly, the body called INEC was meant to be using a new system in the elections. It seems this failed. Also, you just mentioned that the winner got about 8 million votes, the other people got about 6 million. Why was turnout so low? In a country where there's a population of almost 200 million, how can we justify someone being elected as a president with just 8 million votes?
The first thing is, I don't even believe that population number. I think it's false. I've studied election patterns and demographics in the last 4 elections. Yeah. I think our population figures are ballooned. I think they're false. I don't think it's real. We haven't had a census in about 25 years or 30 years. So the figures they find out about is false. But what I can tell you is the numbers that come out are consistent. In the previous 4 elections, say from 99 to date, those numbers are consistent. In the presidential elections, the voting is between 24 and 25 million. Same thing happened this time around. Last year, it was 24, 25. So that hasn't changed. Turnout is averagely that. Forget about the false numbers, they all keep themselves. And in the states as well, in Lagos, in Oyo, in Odo, in Port Harcourt, and everywhere, when you check out all the balloon figures, the figures are largely reflective of the true population of Nigeria. So that's one thing. INEC, for me, is a disaster. Always been a disaster. The last government had a particular talent for hiring competence. They thrived on hiring people and keeping them, even though they couldn't pull themselves. So I didn't think the head of INEC was competent enough to conduct elections. I wouldn't even give him classroom elections to conduct the way he run elections. But he's an umpire. the presidential elections were marred with irregularities. All elections were marred with irregularities. But my belief is the elections largely, despite the irregularities, reflected the will of the people. And I said that, and people don't like it when I say that. It wasn't a perfect elections. There were a lot of things that didn't work. The beaver didn't work. Beavers didn't work. Things didn't work. But I think still at the best, the people's reflection were taking place. And even though INEC messed up the process, there were some things to applaud. We saw godfathers losing in their states. We saw people who we thought they were kings losing. Tinubu didn't win in his own state, in Lagos State. Kwakwaso and Gandula didn't win his own state. All the people that thought they were demigods lost. And we saw a rise of a younger person in some urban areas who showed their voice, who at least started a process where they can consolidate upon and build up a stronger new party if they're smart enough to do it. So yes, it was not the best, but there were learnings, there were new experiences, and there's a chart going forward that can be built upon if people try to think about that.
You are proffering solutions. You just made a point that I resonate with. You said consolidate on the gains from this past election, and if they are smart going forward, improve on the processes so that in 2027, now I'm paraphrasing, so that in 2027, there's a new party and systems work better.
Yeah.
Which is a solution to the situation. I'm going to go back again very briefly. Just before the elections, there was the Naira change issue. There were so many comments left, right, and center. Was that the best fiscal policy at that time? And why has it been reversed now? So where do we go from here, from your opinion?
You see, the point about it is Nigerians are very, very tiring people. They're very tiring people. They're just being bullied. A lot of them have lost their voice, and there's a lot of thinking. And people think supporting everything government does makes you a patriot. People don't understand that patriotism is to the country, not to the government. Many of them can't see that. When the policy was introduced, I wrote several commentary asking what was the intention. I work in policy. That's what I've been doing for 21 years, whether it's education or health or oil and gas. The question about policy that's an intent with policy is to correct something or to catalyze something or to promote something. So I said to them, what are we trying to do with this narrow redesign? What are we trying to achieve with it? Because everything you said doesn't make any sense. When we do a policy and we're doing the policy analysis, we look at the policy analysis and we reference against the framework of the underlying reason for it. Now, if the underlying reason doesn't rhyme with the policy observation, then you change the policy. So it made no sense. We were vertically punished for nothing. A lot of us lost some businesses. Those of us that run some businesses where we needed cash to do, people were unnecessarily suffering for rubbish. And that's why it was reversed. There was no plan. See, that's the thinking about Nigerians. And I was shocked when colleagues of mine who are economists and everything were supporting crap. I'm like, you explain to us, what are we trying to achieve? What's the aim? What's the point? So I felt it was just sheer incompetence. And I told you earlier on that the last government had a talent for promoting mediocrity, and policy that had no sense. It was a constant pattern of the 8 years. And that's why the economy is where it is now, struggling to survive, needing new breath. In the last 5 days, Tinubu has done some very good things. I mean, today they opened the borders again. Because when they closed the borders, we asked the same question we asked. What is the intent? The way I do policy is this. Okay, there's a policy. He aims to achieve this. When you say it aims to achieve, when is the time frame for the achievement? How do you measure the achievement? How do you measure the impact analysis? And how do you ensure that what you set it out to do was done? And if it's not, how do you go back reversal? And that's what is missing. Then the lack of decisions around us. NISA and other policy organs are largely moribund and dead. There are people who everybody's looking for bread and butter. So they don't think properly. Or even if they present policy papers, it doesn't go anywhere. So you expect government to think about policy paper first, run it through their own institutions of governance, test the assumptions they're making, and then put it in the public. But it doesn't happen. Somebody wakes up one morning and says they closed the border. That's the former or the current Comptroller General of Customs. What are you doing this for? They want to remove smuggling of what? It didn't make any difference. We suffered for nothing. Somebody said, we want to change naira design. What's the purpose? It happens. So that's the failure we've had in governance in Nigeria. The lack of rigor in thinking, lack of rigor in practice, and the sentimental value people attach to the nuanced words of patriotism, where patriotism is supporting every stupid decision of government. It's a problem.
I see. This is interesting. I've looked at it in different perspectives, but you've just brought a new perspective into it. Okay, so now we see these issues and situations. Prefer some solutions, some quick fire solutions. If Tinubu should watch this today, or if his policymakers should watch this today, what would you be telling them?
Well, the first thing you tell them to do is think through things properly. The problem is there's very little thought attached to policy design and conceptualization. Second thing is use your institutions. You have NISA, you have the policy strategy studies in Kuru, you have 8 agencies in the policy making space. Let them test assumptions first. Don't be in a rush to do things. Thirdly, be courageous to say when something has failed. If something's not working, say it's not working and say it has failed. It's not a problem in countries. Every country in the world sometimes has failure in policy. Don't beat a dead horse. If a dead horse is dead, let it die, let it go and bury it and move on to something else. And finally, let's take gentle steps, baby steps. An economy is not a place where you try ideas on. You're trying people's life. And at the heart of every intervention we do as government are people. And if you do a people-centric government, then you think better of how your policy will impact their lives. But when you just think government for a few interest people, then we all suffer.
Right. Okay. So let's move away from politics. Let's go to the sector which you specialize in, oil and gas. The world is moving to green energy. If you see our logo, it's the Nigerian,
green
the
TNN.
Nigeria,
Yes.
and you can see the white pattern there, which is meant to represent green energy with wind farms. Exactly. So how do you think Nigeria can transition? Because Dangote has just built a refinery. How can we transition the way other countries like the UK or America are trying to transition at the moment?
So I wrote the National Determined Contribution for Nigeria for year 2016, NDC. The first NDC we used at the COP in Morocco, COP26 in Morocco, COP23, I can't remember. There's many COPs nowadays. So, and at that point in time, we had realized where the emissions were. We're not a high emitting country. That's one. So we're not a big climate influencer. So we are one of those countries where we can benefit from carbon credits and carbon trading. Greening the country is, somebody asked me some question about 2 hours ago about the Dangote refinery and the climate change and green energy. I'm like, sadly, it's not that kind of thinking yet. We are barely able to make energy needs as we have now. We are barely able to solve poverty problems as we have now. So, and green energy is good, but it's one that needs a lot of investments. We don't have the resources to do that. We're very behind the country. In the international plan submitted by the vice president, the outgoing vice president, it estimates that we need an investment of $10 billion annually into green energy to be able to catch up with the rest of the world. But having said that, a lot of things are coming up now. There's more interest in renewables. The more expensive power becomes, the more expensive other things become, the better for us. One good thing I liked about the increase in price of the petrol prices is that my neighbors have noisy generators, can't afford to fill it up all the time. So I'm sure we'll have more peace. And a lot of them had advised them go solar. Solar panels are not as expensive as they were. So buy solar, and so we stop disturbing the neighborhood with crack, and emissions and everything. So that might help again. We do need to have some manufacturing locally. But the challenge we have is that we've agreed that we'll use gas as a transition plan. That's what the government of Nigeria has agreed to. That's what presented in the last meeting in Scotland, in Glasgow. So we will get there gently, but we're very far behind. We're very far from clean energy and renewable energy. We tried to bring in funds into the country. Like windmills into the country. It didn't really work. It wasn't well thought through. But we are doing better on solar. We're doing better out of water and everything. But so gradually we'll get there.
So with regards to solar energy, many estates developers are starting to use solar now in Lagos, in Edo State, I'm sure in various parts of the country, because we have sunlight, and like you said, it stores energy. That's brilliant. You are in the UK at the moment. You're working and you're slightly on holidays as well. How can you compare the standard of living in the UK to the standard of living in Nigeria? And how do you think improvements can be made in Nigeria to get to these standards? Bearing in mind, the UK has been in existence and has been developing for eons of years. So how can this be made possible?
Well, I lecture at the School of Politics and Governance. I'm a lecturer on natural resource governance. So it's a course I take every semester with students there. And I've always taught them something. Tax economies outperform natural resource economies. When you have an economy built on taxation, they always do better than companies built on natural resources. The underlying problem of Nigeria is poverty. Nigeria is a very poor country. People don't like it when you say that. They tell you they have oil in abundance. And I'm like, look, all the oil in the ground divided by the number of people in the country, you're still very poor, even there's no corruption. So that's something people don't understand. And that question is not within government or outside government. People don't realize that if you have 20 people and you have 10 resources, that's 2 to 1. Now, if you have 100 people, that's 1 to 10. Now, UK has a system which is admirable, but a part of it was because Thatcher, who is a very divisive figure in UK, was hard on some issues. A lot of things UK is enjoying now was based on the foundation Thatcher built, and other people followed behind. I know right now you're going through a lot of tough times with the frequent change of from Liz Truss to Sunak and disastrous fiscal policies. But the issue about UK is people have reoriented their minds into what is important to live. So in UK, people don't live to impress all the time. There's people like that. People just want to get by. People have learned how to manage space properly. People know the consequences for bad behavior. You drive anyhow, you lose points. You drink and drive, you might lose a license. So there's sanction system in the UK. And that's why it works. Human nature is the same everywhere in the world. Everybody wants to beat law, beat design. But in a country like Nigeria, where following the law is not an incentive, you're punished for following the law. So the reward is for jungle justice. And so when you live in a jungle, like you create conscious for a jungle, you create animals. That's the difference. So the economic performance, you guys have a lot of debt as well. There are debts everywhere. I was holding my head when they said they will increase university fees again. Now what they're paying now is really little. And I'm like, whoa, it's not enough. It's too high already. But that's the thing. And there's a thing about it. There's a value to your currency. So a lot of my friends say, okay, £1,000. £1,000 is like now 95,000 naira in Nigeria now. But £1,000
900 is it 950,000?
Whatever, okay, 950. So just say 950. Yeah. £1,000 will take you further than 950,000. And that's the real challenge of it. So it's not that comparativeness, it's the value of the currency, what it can buy for you, what it can do for you. I take an Uber. Average Uber I take anywhere I go around is 25, 31, 41 thousand pounds. Now that's 18,000 naira for a 45 minutes journey. Or that I wouldn't pay 18,000 for a 45 minute journey in Nigeria. People think that's too much money. I'll pay 6,000 and everything. So we increase poverty levels amongst ourselves, which is saddening. And then the lack of consequences. So consequences are 2 forms. Political consequences. A prime minister broke the law. Had parties when all of this should have been locked down. People protested, he's gone. This trust comes up. in her first 3 days of office, makes disastrous fiscal policies that affects the currency market, she's gone. You bring another person. Last elections showed that Labour did better than expected. If you want for the elections now, so there's a consequence for wrong political choices. In Nigeria, APC punished us with poverty for 8 years. The Nigerians wanted APC with another chance. I mean, I was looking at it, not put a vote, I'm like, are you guys sick? After we've done these 8 years of punishment? So that is at the political level. Then at the micro level, one friends come over to my hotel and I said, have a drink. I said, oh, I'm driving. They know that if something happens and they have a certain level of alcohol in their body, there'll be a price to pay. They sell alcohol in parks in Nigeria. In the car park where people are taking off to drive on Longos, they sell alcohol. You see your driver taking Paraga and other things. And nobody goes there. I've asked the FRSC and the VIO, Vehicle Inspector Officers in Nigeria, I'm saying, why don't you go and check in motor parks? Why do you stay out on the road? Go to motor parks and check commercial drivers. But nobody cares about the poor in our country. So the poor have no rules and regulations. So air regulations are really well done because the rich know they can also die in planes if planes are not well regulated, and there's a lot of people that have accidents and everything. So, but the poor, which are the majority, are not counted for. So, and that's one of the things you don't have here. In here, every layer of society matters. There's thinking for those who have disability. There's thinking for those who are able. So every segment of society is there. So it's not really about how long Britain has existed for. It's what you've adopted as a business practice. It's how the people have made demands on government. It's a consciousness of people knowing that my votes make difference, and people willing to vote out a poor performance.
This is so brilliant. There's so much to talk about, but let's go somewhere else. We have a lot of Nigerians in the UK. Part of what the new Nigerian does is to find these Nigerians in the UK doing well in their various fields, try and link them up with Nigerians in Nigeria to see if they can get together to develop Nigeria by executing projects. We call it bridging the gap. We call it the reverse brain drain. Seeing if we can get the brains that are here now and see if we can export that resource back to Nigeria. Just as there was a brain drain from Nigeria, there continues to be a brain drain. At some point, I think we'll get it right because we already are trying to get into the educational sector, the agricultural sector, the health sector. So I will use some people in Idoani, for example. The past, I think 2 terms ago, president of the association who lives in Canada has been able to export health for Nigeria all the way from Canada, and is making impacts in places like Oyo State, Ondo State. So what do you think to this idea, and how can it be improved?
Well, to be honest, not an area I'm well versed in. So I won't say I have authority, but I've seen a lot of diaspora people trying to do things in Nigeria. I've seen them bringing innovation and ideas. We've seen them in financial, in fintech. We've seen them in health, like you mentioned. I've seen David Ikuda, IC and Co. I've seen a lot of people in other areas bringing new innovation. What we are not doing well in Nigeria is we're not being as receptive to those ideas as possible. Nigeria frustrates people, not by design, but by the fact that everybody's scrambling to eat. And therefore, it now makes within them ability to conceive long-term goals. So everybody's short-term thinking. What I think we need to do is do it in a more systemic manner. One of the things I'm happy about is that the president has said he's going to unify the exchange rate, which remittances will come in now, and they'll come in through maybe organized channels. And when it comes to organized channels, we can use the remittances for more for the development. And I think the last government, the VP at that time, Shibanjo tried to do a lot of things in that area, but he wasn't the final decision maker. So he was frustrated about it. But I think it's something positive. I mean, I'm not afraid about the people coming here. I think when you learn new things, one thing I realized is the people in diaspora are very patriotic. I meet people who believe in Nigeria. Every time I meet a Nigerian, they ask me questions. What can they do? This is what they're doing. Can they think? And it's all out of altruism. That desire for them to have a country where they can be proud of. So it's there. What I hope is this government can use that to the best of, can harness these skills together. But like I said earlier, I'm not very well versed in this corporation things. But I hear a lot of positive things, and I hope it's encouraged.
Thank you. Like I said, there's so much to talk about, but time is always of the essence.
Yes.
At this point, I would just like for you to speak to the audience, both in Nigeria and in diaspora. Set expectations, give advice on ways forward to improve motherland, really. This is important.
Well, first of all, let me say by thanking you for what you are doing, because I know this is something you're doing out of a passion of your heart. And that's a very good thing, because we need as many platforms for voices to come on board. And hopefully, like you said, somebody might listen and something might find something useful. The other thing I'll say to everybody here is don't give up and don't be discouraged about Nigeria. We're not a basket case. We're not lost. We will get there. We have something in Nigeria. We are resilient. We have a never die spirit. And that spirit is why most of you thrive when you're abroad. I'm very proud of Nigerians I see in UK, in Canada, in America. Everywhere I go, I meet them and they're rising to the top of their profession and contributing to the economies where they live in. And so Nigeria is not bad. It's the system around it that makes them bad. And the lack of resources that brings out the animal in us. So just to encourage you guys to keep on being positive about us. And to Nigerians back home, it's time to stop celebrating mediocrity. Let's not be because of party or religion or such things. These guys always go. Buhari has gone. Whatever things an animal, an angry is gone. One day Tinubu will go, but Nigeria will always remain. And we need to find, I tell everybody, the moment we find one black nation that's working, we get respect internationally. One black nation must work properly. And the most potential one is Nigeria. I mean, see how well we do in everything in sports. I mean, you watch the Premier League, you watch the Champions League, you watch every kind of league, Nigerians everywhere. You watch them in athletics, you watch them in cooking, you watch them in technology, you watch them in every space we are thriving. Why can't we harness that energy to make it back home? So my advice is don't give up. Continue supporting us. Try it and try it again. There are spaces for engagement, but believe in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Ademola Adigun. Audience, you've heard it. He's made a lot of points here. Take time to listen to this podcast. You'll realize that there's a lot of value that has just been dropped by Ademola on this podcast. We are most grateful for his time. We can't keep him. His time is very limited with us. We do hope that we get a second chance to do a part 2 with him, maybe in another few months or in another year. We can sit down again to see if things have improved from today up until the next time we sit down again. Audience, I'm going to let Ademola go now. It's been a long day for him. So many things to write. If you're interested in asking Ademola questions, please drop your comments down below, and we will make sure they get passed on to him. And we will also see if we can publish some of his answers going forward on the New Nigerian. Demola, what I tend to do now, we will close the recording. I'll spend another couple of minutes with you, and then I can let you go, okay?
Thank you.
Just one final goodbye to the audience from you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, audience. And here's to you guys listening to more of our podcasts. Thank you so much. Bye for now.